Politicians should be paid more. Don't switch off. I know what you're thinking, but hear me out. I've been around politicians for all my working life. They work 60 or 70 hours a week, sometimes more, usually 7 days. Most of them travel, so they stay away from their family for 3 nights a week. They spend their days in Parliament, their evenings at meetings and functions, their weekends with constituents at surgeries, or cutting ribbons at local events. We expect all this from them. If we don't get it, we're angry, and we let them know about it. They're mocked in the press for their parents and their partners to read. They're viciously abused online for their kids to see. And they do all that for less money than a head teacher, less than a senior doctor, less than a senior police officer. If we don't pay them more, the good ones are going to leave. They already are. And we won't get any better in their place. This really matters. Coronavirus is an illustration for all of us of the importance of having good politicians. Because politicians are like most other things in life, folks. You get what you pay for.
And Andy joins us from his home to debate his arguments with the writer and journalist Angela Haggerty. Andy, an MSP currently gets paid just under $65,000. What should they be paid, in your opinion?
I would double it. I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be on a significantly higher salary. I would double MSP's salary. I would pay cabinet secretaries hundreds of thousands of pounds, and I would pay the First Minister something like $500,000. I think that given the job that we expect them to do, given the importance of the job they do and the effect it has on all of us and all our lives, I don't see why they shouldn't be. And it's not out of kilter with other similar jobs. The chief executives of the biggest local authorities in Scotland get several £100,000 a year, as do the bosses of state organisations like Scottish Water and Scottish Enterprise get hundreds of thousands of pounds a year. And I think politicians should be the same, because we want the best and that'll give us the best.
Right. Angela, he's talking hundreds of thousands of pounds, $500,000 for the First Minister. Would that be value for money?
I almost want to become a politician if that's the road we're going down. I disagree. I think that politics is a vocational kind of role. It's not really comparable to other professions or jobs. You don't get trained to become a politician. There's no politician school that you go to, although you'd be forgiven for thinking that maybe Oxford's one, given the amount of politicians and prime ministers we get coming from there. But it isn't that kind of job. It's a job that should be open to all, and it should be primarily motivated by a kind of a drive that you have from, one, wanting to represent constituents, but two, having your own kind of personal vision of how you can contribute to making the country a better place. If finance becomes the main motivating factor, I think it begins to compromise all of that kind of thing. And I think that we're going down a kind of dodgy road there. We already have a pretty elitist politics as it is. We already have a lot of people from working classes and lower tiers of society thinking it's not really the place for them. And I don't think that bumping it up so that we're sending out the message that this is for really highly qualified and highly educated people, I don't think that that's necessarily the right message to send out. Plus, remember, the taxpayer pays for these wages, and we have to remember that public servants, the wages of public servants have to reflect that position too.
Right, quite a lot to pick up on there, Andy. It's vocational, and it might exclude a lot of people if you're talking that kind of money. They might think it's not for them.
No, far from excluding people. Actually, you're including more people, because you're increasing the pool of people who might want to become politicians. Last night on your show, Neil Findlay, an excellent, retiring, unfortunately, politician, said that we would like to see more, for example, doctors in the Scottish Parliament. Well, you're not going to get any, because they'd have to take a pay cut to be there. Now, what we would do by increasing the salary is increase the pool of people who'd be able to become politicians. It wouldn't put anybody off. It would increase the number of people who could do it. As for about it being a vocational job, okay, look, it doesn't mean that you don't have a vision. The reality is there's a lot of people who have a vision, who could do really well in politics and who could represent people brilliantly, who wouldn't do it just now, because the reality is the risk reward, all the things I talked about in the video, the hassle that comes with politician is just not worth it for the amount of money that they're actually getting paid.
Andy, I understand that there's a lot of hassle. It's long hours, all of these things. Politicians have to put up with a lot. But as I say, this isn't. It's not a career that you train for. It's a 5-year fixed term. With, let's face it, I mean, it's just under 65 grand at Holyrood. It's 80,000 at Westminster. For a public servant, these are, I think, fairly generous wages. Expenses.
Well, they're not really. You know, the reality is that you'll see a lot of middle managers in councils who get paid similar amounts of money. There's an awful lot of public servants in this country, hundreds of them, who get paid more than politicians. And I think that's the wrong way round. Politicians are really, really important. We want good ones. They make decisions that affect us all the time, far more so than public servants who get paid more money than they do.
Okay.
But as I was going to say, these are fixed-term parliaments. This is not the kind of thing that you go into and you do for the rest of your life and you want to pay your mortgage. Most people will go in and out of politics. That's where we like that. We like that variety to let new, fresh faces and voices in. But I think 80 grand a year for a 5-year minimum where you know that income is guaranteed, and as I say, your expenses and things are paid, I don't think that that's entirely unreasonable for a public servant. If we're talking about raising the wages of anyone, I would think more likely local councillors who in Scotland I think earn more around about 17 grand. I think it would be better to maybe see some of that kind of levelled out a bit, maybe bring a few more people up. But I think politicians' wages that we have right now compared to a lot of other, a lot of people would bite your hand off for wages like that every year guaranteed.
Andy, you're agreeing there. You're agreeing.
Well, but then that's good, right? If they would bite your hand off, then more of them might stand for Parliament. We need to put this into context. There's only 129 of them. This is pocket money. Okay, in terms of how much the country spends in general, doubling the salaries of politicians is pocket money. It's nothing whatsoever. So I think we need that in perspective too.
From a very privileged position, if you think that 65 grand a year is pocket money and that doubling it doesn't.
Angela, you know I didn't say that.
It's taxpayers' money.
What I said was, if you look at the expenditure on MSP salaries in the context of national expenditure in general, it is pocket money. I'm not saying 65 grand is pocket money. I'm talking about the expenditure on politicians. It's not a lot.
Eating out food banks and poverty as well. I mean, this is what the public.
This is just This is a deflectionary argument.
Hang on, Andy. Hang on, Andy. Angela, finish.
I think you're going to struggle to tell the public that politicians should have their salary doubled into the hundreds of thousands, and some others with even higher wage rises than that, when we have the levels of poverty and deprivation that we have in our communities. The public's not really going to buy that.
Yeah, I mean, Andy, is it ever going to happen? I mean, the politicians can't be seen to vote for it themselves, can they?
Of course it's not going to happen, because the public wouldn't like it, and politicians themselves, because they fall into the trap of wanting to do what the public want them to do, are often the first ones to say, we don't need a pay rise, everything's fine, we get paid lots, we love our job. So of course it will never happen. But the point is, we can't let this denigrate into but there's people who are in food banks. That would be a reason not to pay anybody anything. It's not about that.
And we will have to leave it there. Brilliant, lively debate. Thank you both very much indeed for joining us this evening.